A drop of water is worth more than a sack of gold to a thirsty man.
Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the issue of FATF, this Financial Action Task Force. As we all know that the Asian Pacific Group's meeting is going to be held in Paris in the coming days, and now the option for Pakistan is either to present a case which is acceptable to them and Pakistan is taken off from the grey area or the grey list, or another way, for example, if the authorities are not satisfied, Pakistan might stay in the grey list. So we'll be talking about the FATF grey list, its implications primarily on Pakistan, though on the other hand, India is trying its level best that they could also politicize this particular issue, and Pakistan has also shown it's a lot of concern regarding the co-chairing of APG by an Indian. Obviously that has raised a lot of questions. Obviously it also leads to some biased decision making at the end of the day. But overall, where do we stand at the moment? What we were supposed to do, what we haven't done, what we've been able to do, this is what we'll be talking about. Let me introduce you to our panelists we have with us in our studio. On my right is Javed Siddique Saab, needs introduction as a senior columnist, a senior journalist. Thank you very much. And we have with us Air Commodore retired Basit Raza Abbasi, who's a senior analyst. Thank you very much, sir. And we have with us Dr. Farida Faisal, known economist. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out your time and being here with us in our program. Now, let's see, the Prime Minister, since he's going to be flying to China, but he also issued a very important statement. Let's hear what the Prime Minister had to say.
Discovered that while we were trying to have dialogue, they were trying to push us in the blacklist and FATF. Pakistan is pushed into the blacklist of FATF. That means there will be sanctions on Pakistan. So they were trying to bankrupt us economically. That's when we pulled back. And that's when we realized that this government is on an agenda. The agenda is to push Pakistan to disaster.
And now there was another statement from the Foreign Office. Let's see what they had to share. Singh's statement reinforces Pakistan's concerns, repeatedly highlighting to the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, and also its membership about India's attempts to politicize the FATF proceedings to further its narrow Pakistan's objective. Rajnath Singh's statement reinforces Pakistan's concerns, repeatedly highlight the FATF membership about India's attempts to politicize the FATF proceedings. Now, this was primarily stated by Dr. Faisal, the Foreign Office spokesperson. Now, Javed Saab, a couple of very interesting questions. I mean, first one, whatever the Prime Minister had said, I mean, there are different phases of war, different terminologies, different generations. Now we talk about the 5th generation warfare. People are even talking about the 6th generation, even onwards. Now this one phenomena that we all thought that will be safe from India is that now we have a nuclear weapon, we are a nuclear power. So it played the role of a deterrent. But we most likely forgot the other aspects. The cultural invasion, the economic invasion, I would say, the kind of assessment they in fact did about the Pakistani exports and how they captured that market share. So we never realized on so many various fronts, I would say. Your take, sir, is this also one of that?
Certainly it is, and we must not forget that India, ever since the creation of Pakistan, launched a multi-pronged attack on us. Physical attacks, 65 war, they attacked our populous city, Lahore, and they were, some of the generals had claimed that they would be enjoying or they would be celebrating their victory in Gymkhana Club, Lahore. That didn't happen. But in 1971, they invaded East Pakistan and dismembered Pakistan by making a naked aggression against Pakistan. And since then, they have been launching a multi-pronged strategy to weaken Pakistan, to destabilize it. And this FATF that you have mentioned in your introductory remarks is a front where they want to push Pakistan into the blacklist of FATF and they want Pakistan, as Prime Minister has very clearly said, they want to push Pakistan into destruction. So they want sanctions on Pakistan. They want to cripple Pakistan economically and otherwise. They do not miss any opportunity to tarnish the image of this country, our beloved country, Pakistan. So we must be prepared on all these fronts, on the diplomatic front, on the economic front. And the economic front is very important because they want to weaken us economically, because they can understand, and they do understand, that economy and strong economy provides a strong base for a very impregnable defense. So to weaken Pakistan's defense and to weaken its capability to defend its integrity and sovereignty, they would like to weaken Pakistan economically. And this is one way how they are planning to do this to Pakistan. FATF is a front where they are trying to politicize this whole thing. And you know, the latest report issued by this Asia Pacific group is very encouraging from Pakistan's angle, because a lot of achievements have been shown by Pakistan on a number of fronts. But unfortunately, India is trying to damage us. It is trying to tarnish our image, and we have to be very cautious and careful.
All right. Now, sir, when you talk about multiple areas we've been attacked, economy is definitely one. And if you remember, there were so many statements coming from the Indian leadership where they very categorically mentioned that we'll isolate Pakistan. Isolate in a way that whatever decision they take, I mean, Kashmir is one example right in front of us. And despite our efforts, things are not that great, the way they should have been. But over here, sir, now we have also shown our concern that the co-chair is an Indian. Obviously, the decision could be biased. But still, when you look at the overall performance by the Pakistani side, within the given capacity, obviously, do you think that we have done enough, or do you believe that we could have done a little more?
Actually, we started...
Because the chances are, this is what the report said, that the chances are we might stay in the grey list.
Most probably, that would be it, because, you know, the last meeting which took place in Canberra, Australia, Pakistan was placed on enhanced follow-up category. So previously we were giving a biannual report. Now we are required to put up a quarterly report. So that is the kind of monitoring. We are now more closely monitored. Having said that, Pakistan started late. Actually, FATF has 40 recommendations which have to be implemented if you want to avoid this kind of thing. Pakistan, there are institutional, structural, legal and other steps which have to be taken. So Pakistan did take those steps, but it takes time to sort of these steps to come into force. The framework has been laid, but its result, like if I give you an example, they monitor that how many people were apprehended for money laundering, and how many of them were brought to the courts, and how many of them were convicted. So all these, we have some weaknesses. Either we are not able to catch sufficient number of people, money laundering cases, some of them escape our net which we have laid, or if we bring to the court, the evidence is not strong enough to convict them, so they are released by the court. So all these are the things which are actually, a framework has been laid, but it has to be strengthened. So in my mind, I'm very confident that this plenary meeting which is going to take place now will only perhaps continue to keep Pakistan on the grey list, but there is no question of Pakistan going into blacklist.
But
Whatever
we're going in the
India may
right
wish,
direction, basically. You said. I mean,
whatever
it took
India
us
may
some
wish.
time
Yes,
to get up, but we're moving in the right direction.
that's right. We are moving there, and they have.
We'll definitely talk about those 40 different areas
Yes,
in a while. But moving on now, ma'am, even the Prime Minister, during his 51-minute address in the UNGA, emphasized on 4 important points. Climate, he also spoke about Kashmir, Islamophobia, but one was about money laundering and terror financing. So this is something very important for countries like Pakistan, for that matter. Now, money laundering in a larger canvas, and then you look at this terror financing as a part of it. Now, I have a list of so many names over here. I was going through these. Jamaat-ud-Dawa, FIF, LAT, JEM, Haqqani Network, AQ, Daesh for that matter, and so many names of the individuals. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Quetta Shura, Lashkar-e-Taiba for that matter, Jamaat-ud-Dawa, and Saniyat Foundation, and so on and so forth. Nothing has been done on that level, you know, where you have put an absolute check. Because there are certain areas, somebody who was a part of the delegation in Australia earlier told me that, a lot of youngsters are, in fact, are the people who are asking the questions there in their late 20s and early 30s out there. They are very professional, and most of our members who were there to, in fact, present the case were unable to deliver the right answer.
Yeah.
You know, that was another area. So, ma'am, when things are so important, and obviously when they take the names, you need to be prepared. You need to have an answer for that.
Okay, I think it requires convincing. I think it requires good politics. It requires not only action, but also how that action is portrayed and reflected and communicated. So weaknesses are on both fronts. And I think, again, that image building of Pakistan as a whole, which had suffered so much in the past, but slightly improving after Prime Minister Imran Khan's candid speech at the UNGA, should be helpful in the long run. But let us be very clear. Compliance to these 40 conditionalities is good for Pakistan itself. So it's not just convincing the other people that we are on the right track and that we should be given a further opportunity, but also for the sake of our own economy to be taking these steps. It's going to be good for us in the long run. However, having said that, I think that India is trying its level best at the moment to isolate us, push us into the blacklist. But even in the grey list, I think, again, that we are going to find, as far as our exports are concerned, as far as integrating with the global economy is concerned, we are going to find, have hurdles there. So yes, it needs a resolution.
What sort of hurdles do you normally face when you are in the grey list, or, for example, if you're taken off and you are unfortunately the blacklist, and things
at the moment.
Because I guess it's North Korea and Iran. These are the two only countries who are in the blacklist, basically. So they're facing a lot of financial problems.
Think about it. They are
Sanctions,
clear-cut
exactly.
sanctions there. I mean, not able to export, not able to, trade in the world, global economy. So, those things take a toll on the national economies, and eventually it reflects on the way business is done. So overall, it retards growth. So it's a very negative situation. Even being on the grey list means that you have to be very careful. But then again, grey list conditionalities in themselves, if followed, will help us to bring about the kind of structural reform which is really the most important thing in the economy at the moment.
All right. Now, sir, you want to add, or... So sorry, so, right, sir. So you just
Actually,
carry on, and then I'll put a question to you.
One outcome of being on the grey list is that your cost of financing increases, because countries like Pakistan, we need external financing, we need loans, and we borrow money from financial institutions. And if you are on grey list, it has two negative outcomes. Firstly, the FDI suffers because the confidence of investor is negatively impacted if you are on the grey list. And secondly, when you want to borrow money, either you don't get it or you get it at a higher cost. So these are the two negative fallouts for Pakistan or any other developed country which doesn't have a strong economy.
Now, Javed sir, it says the Mutual Evaluation Report of 2019 has not agreed with Pakistan's assessment that it faces medium category risks of money laundering and terror financing. Medium, so it means that they are looking at the high risk level. So let's talk about that.
I think the report, I have read some parts of it. It's encouraging in the sense that when we were placed on this grey list for quite some time back, we were expecting that because of the Indian propaganda and politicization of this whole issue, probably will be pushed into the blacklist, and that would have been very disastrous for Pakistan. Thanks to some of our friends there in this group, we were not. I mean, Indians were not able to push us into that blacklist, but we are still there, and we need to do a lot of things. We need to take some more steps, and we have to be very careful and cautious. And this is a stick in the hands of Indians with which they are beating us. The names of the organizations and the individuals that you just have mentioned, they are not just the creation of Pakistan. You know, Pakistan fought 2 wars against terrorism. One war that we fought in 70s and 80s was against the Soviet forces in Afghanistan. And the former foreign minister of Foreign Secretary of United States of America, Hillary Clinton, has said in a congressional meeting that these mujahideens were our creature. We nurtured them and nourished them, and we must not forget this fact. And subsequently, after 9/11, another war against terror started, and Pakistan was there to bear the brunt of that war. So these are the remnants of those 2 wars, the 80s wars and the 90s war against terrorism, the 80s war against the Soviet forces, and some of these organizations and some individuals, they were in Pakistan, and we inherited them from those wars. And now we need to take strong actions against these organizations.
The point is,
and
now this is something very important, because whatever has been done in the past, it's a part of history now.
History.
But now what we need to do is, like, it's
but
totally
we
our
are
own,
paying the price, but Pakistan is paying the price for that.
We have paid the price.
So,
we are still paying. But so if you allow me, let's look at it from the lawyer's perspective. Where do we stand at the moment as far as FATF is concerned? We have with us online Ahmed Bilal Sufi, former federal minister and also an expert on international law. Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed Bilal Sufi sahab.
Ji, walaikum assalam.
Sir, thank you very much for taking out the time and talking to PTV World. Now, first of all, sir, since you're an expert on this subject, tell us, where do we stand at the moment, sir? Because what we have read so far, that makes us understand that we might stay in the grey list. Now, what we haven't done to get out of it, and what have we done that despite the pressure by the Indians, we haven't been pushed into the blacklist, sir, though the decision has been taken, but this seems to be the general course of action. So your take.
Well, I look at it from a legal point of view, and I think Pakistan has done quite well in terms of taking very meaningful steps domestically under its domestic law to take measures in respect of money laundering, in respect of all predicate offences, which are the heart and soul of the set of recommendations, which are now binding in nature. So Pakistani government, provincial governments, even at district level, the prosecution branch have been taking some very meaningful steps. Pakistan has also been able to make legislation sufficiently whereby that is the reason why it has been categorized as partially compliant in respect of, I believe, about 26 items. And it's an ongoing process because lots of other organizations like the regulators, such as the State Bank of Pakistan, the SCCP and others, are in the process of working on various guidelines, procedures, because as these transnational crimes that are covered as predicate offences in the FATF becomes more complex, the more sophisticated they become, there's an obligation on the FATF member states to ensure that legislation and rule making is also as sophisticated to respond to them. And that's what exactly the evaluation process is all about by the Asia Pacific group or by the FATF plenary. So I think Pakistan has done quite well in terms of being rated as partially compliant, which basically essentially means that Pakistan should not be taken off the grey list for sure. if the plenary goes by the legal work which has been documented in the report.
So, sir, would you also like to throw light on the areas where you think there was some negligence or we couldn't do much?
Well, that's an area. One is what they call as technical compliance, and the other aspect is implementation of the technical compliance. Technical compliance means whether any state, including Pakistan, has on its statute books the relevant laws, rules, procedures, and regulations. So Pakistan has been able to convince the evaluators that it has technically complied with most of the criterion. Regarding the implementation, that's where the gaps are, and the gaps are primarily related to capacity of investigators, prosecution machinery, and the awareness of the judges relating to these matters, which require long-term training procedures, long-term capacity building exercises, and that's when implementation will begin to improve as well. So it is hoped that if the government continues with its momentum regarding the implementation and the compliance, in evaluations after this, it will be able to show much better documentation relating to implementation as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Suvisa. Now, quick comment, sir, on this, that it is all about the implementation. You legislate, you make something, and that becomes a law, and then the problem is about its implementation. First issue is about the capacity. Second is about the awareness also, sir, that generally people do not know what they're up to.
Yes, I think Sufi Saab has pointed out the fact that we need to build our capacity to implement all those steps which needs to be taken. And Pakistan has, of course, technically they have done a lot of work, and they have presented their case before this Asia Pacific group, and I think it has been appreciated. But obviously on the implementation side, we need more concerted work, concerted efforts, plus, as he has pointed out, that we need to build our capacity to implement all these reforms as the structural reforms that we need to do. And some of the issues that are there, our judges, our prosecutors, our legal system is probably not well prepared for that. So he's very right that we need to build our capacity to implement these steps so that we live up to the standard or expectations that are required there at this group.
Sure.
I think we need to understand what is the rubric of FATF. There are two parts to it: anti-money laundering and terror financing. Both are financial crimes. There's a difference. Money laundering is where the money is ill-gotten. Either you have got it through drug trafficking or human trafficking or corruption or whatever means, illegal means, and you want to legitimize it. This is money laundering. Terror financing is different because the money might have been acquired by legitimate means, like donations from people or whatever means are there, which are legitimate means, but their application is wrong. So on these two parameters we have to focus. And if we now see the sort of dissect the what has happened so far, there were 40 points. We were non-compliant on 4 of them. This is serious. This should not have been the case. I mean, we have been there for over a year at it, and those 4 areas should not have been left unattended. So that is where we have to seriously work on it. Rest, we have on 1 we have totally compliant. On 6 we are on 9 we are largely compliant, and on 26 we are partially compliant. So this is what I was in front of me when I said that there is no way that Pakistan could be pushed into blacklist, because we are moving forward. If there are certain gaps, certain areas where we have not made sufficient progress, it's all right, because we are actually implementing a whole new system. The laws have been made, the SROs have been issued, the capacity building is in process. All this doesn't happen in a short time. So Pakistan needs more time, and any reasonable person would always grant that time, because if a country is making efforts in that directions, you need to give them time. And I'm sure Pakistan will get time. And if I may add, this is the technical side of it. But FATF is largely has a lot of political influences. If you see the very inception of this organization, it is created by G7. It's a rich man's club. And they are the ones who wanted a better control and arm twisting mechanism for the flow of money. So that is why this organization was created. And now
But the organization has become so powerful. You
It
talk about
is.
the G7, so
It
they
is.
can actually twist your arm. Then
that
they
is
are.
true. But please just reflect back. Why was Pakistan? Pakistan was put on the watch list in 2008, and from 2012 to 2015 we were on the on this list, and now again. And this time, when we are put, that was the time when India was going very intimate with America was going with very intimate with India, and they actually sort of pushed Pakistan into this list.
Whose fault is it? Ours.
That's right.
We
But
never
now
realized
those
the
fences have
level
been
of
mended. Now
sort
those
of threat
fences
we had at that time. Now, sir, a quick
those
comment
fences have
on
been
that.
mended.
Sir, now, ma'am, you know, interestingly, let me exactly read out what the report says. It says competent authorities have varying levels of understanding of the country's money laundering and terror financing risks, and the private sector has a mixed understanding of these risks. While Pakistan established a multi-agency approach to implementing its AML CFT regime, it was not implementing a comprehensive and coordinated risk-based approach to combating money laundering and terror financing. Next is for money laundering. Now, this was about there was no clear-cut understanding among the competent authorities, including LEAs. As far as terror financing is concerned, it says Pakistani authorities have a mixed understanding of risk. Federal FIA has a low level of terror financing risk understanding. FIA, the main body, while provincial police, counter-terrorism departments have a better understanding. I mean, there seems to be a disconnect within the core regulatory and other institutions, I would say, which need to be worked very closely.
Yes.
It seems there's a disconnect also.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's a governance issue actually.
So it's not the
Structural
capacity,
problem.
or is it the governance?
That
where the
is,
problem
that
seems
is,
to
that
be?
is exactly what it is. The governance issue in itself is when I talk about governance, basically what I mean is accountability is part of governance. Accountability mechanisms, the rules and regulations of government, the way government is run, that's part of governance, you see. So, I mean, obviously there are huge gaps and lacunas there, and we know that. It's not just related to FATF. That is one of the issues which Pakistan has been facing since long. Now the question is why these have been blown out of proportion now. So that's where I think I would agree with my colleague that these are not issues which just happened after a certain point in time. We've been facing this issue since long. Then why the list of non-profit organizations which you pointed out, they have been existing for long. So why now that it's the whole idea that Pakistan cannot is a non-compliant country, why give that image? I think overall it has a lot to do with politics and also a lot to do with how we reform our systems. So as I said in the beginning, it is more important that we do this for ourselves right now. So the compliance in itself.
We can't be the State Bank of Pakistan, ma'am, and we can't even be the SECP for that matter. You know what they've said about these two financial institutes? Again, I mean, it's not, we always live in a fool's paradise, unfortunately. We need to understand what they've written. It says, now this is very interesting, the State Bank of Pakistan, this is not me, this is the report. The State Bank of Pakistan does not have a clear understanding of the money laundering and terror financing risks unique to the sectors it supervises. Now it says there was little evidence that the SECP's supervisory activity was improving AML CFT behavior. Pakistan Post, CDNS, DNFBPs were not supervised for AML CFT compliance.
Well,
what else should I say?
As far as these bodies are concerned, their regulatory frameworks are quite strong, and maybe it needs a little bit of more upgradation. But certainly, I mean, and as technology,
365 days, maybe more have passed, ma'am.
No, I know,
So,
but overall, I think that it requires a little bit more time. I think State Bank of Pakistan is performing its regulatory duties quite well. I think the control and its prudential regulations are quite strong. Few changes here and there would hopefully make things better in the future. So I think that this report agreed things could have been better, but they could also have been worse. So I think that as far as the capacity of State Bank or SECP is concerned, that is not a major problem. The major problem, I think, is the capacity of the other bodies, you see, other institutions, the regulatory mechanisms which are, government regulatory mechanisms which need to be upgraded. And I think the use of technology is going to help us a lot. I think that will bring about the kind of transparency, because just today, I will give you an example. Just today, I was trying to, do a transaction in one of my banks, and they said that your bank account has been restricted now. Okay, it's frozen because you didn't come and do your biometric thing. And there I came to know that now all our bank accounts are linked. So that's a very, it's a progress. It's a big progress that it improves the transparency, and hopefully we should be able to communicate that when we are going for the next tranche. But at this point in time, I think we are pleading our case as well as it could be pleaded.
All right, but things should improve, and
it will. They are
be some
going,
visible
the
improvement
important
also.
thing is we are going in the right direction.
All right, I mean,
there was a lot of problem, but we are going in the right direction.
Now, Siddiq sir, one area again, since the lady just mentioned about the transactions which should be monitored. Wherever you go on the globe, so now what they're doing is that they're trying to make sure that less paper money is used. Either do you do your transactions through your card, or now they're all talking about these phone applications. You just need to show it, and you have an account. You have, I mean, it's a bank within itself.
Yes.
So, trying to avoid the paper transactions. Now, sir, in our country, I mean, whatever we say, what Modi did when he came into power, if you remember, sir, that was important. And now, in our case, sir, where the grey area of economy is so big, people say it's as big as the actual economy. Don't you think that we really need to take some very, very robust steps?
Drastic actions.
Drastic actions. On war footing, like within 2 months. I mean, why to waste time?
You're right. We need to catch up with the rest of the world in money transactions, in bank dealings, and all these things. Because in some areas, we are far behind the advanced world. And what we are doing now, the world is watching us, and that's why, these are the vulnerabilities of Pakistan, which we need to improve, and we need to strengthen these areas. I think that for a long period of time, these areas were neglected areas, and that's why we are paying a price for that. The government itself, the Prime Minister has been saying that money has been laundered from Pakistan by some very important people and personalities. And, there was no check on this. And one of the members of this NAB, I spoke to him last night, and he was not here in Pakistan. I was trying to get the latest from him as to how, what improvement has been made, or what has been achieved in bringing that illegal money or the money that was laundered from Pakistan to bring it back to our country. And there's a zero progress. So I think these are the areas where Pakistan needs to focus, need a lot of focus on these things. They need to improve these mechanisms.
It's such a complicated issue.
Yes, it is.
That, I mean, even you hire a lawyer, I mean, that lawyer is going to cost you more at times, than the actual sum involved.
And the other countries which are involved in this, and the legal mechanisms that we need to bring this money back and to stop this money laundering from Pakistan, all these things need to be taken care of, and we need experts. We need people who know, and we need to use technology. I'll agree with my colleague that technology can help us a lot in getting out of this situation. So I think Pakistan now needs, and Pakistan must realize, the government of Pakistan, the regulatory authorities, SECP and FIA and other State Bank of Pakistan, must be aware of the implication of this slackness on their part. If they are not going to live up to the modern standards and they don't adopt the international practices, probably we will keep suffering the way we are suffering now.
Absolutely. You talk about the issue of offshore companies. You talk about tax-free havens, for that matter, in Jamaica or elsewhere. And you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars, not only from Pakistan, but from all over the world. So we all know how things work out. And they're untouchables, honestly. They are such strong bodies, and they have got they're super connected with all the major stakeholders, I would say, starting from the people like Alan Greenspan, for that matter, that how to look after the monetary policy of USA. They are so influential till to whatever level. Whether you talk about the arms deal or otherwise, I mean, you know the role of these giants. Our Prime Minister in particular talked about this also, because these are the terror financing hubs, I would say, sir. These are the main areas one has to look into. Nothing has been done because don't you think this is primarily a very biased approach of the Western world? Since you were talking about twisting the arm, don't you think this is something they also need to look into? You can catch 1%, but what about the rest of the 99%?
I'm very clear in my mind that these are just arm twisting and tail twisting organizations. The jargon may be very altruistic, but the intent is not good. It's actually to sort of subjugate the have-nots. Countries like Pakistan, who rely on external financial institutions. And Prime Minister was very right when he pointed out in his speech in UNGA that all this ill-gotten money of corruption is actually parked in the rich countries, and nobody's bothered about it. So this is it. The basic purpose of this, whatever is written on the paper, may be all very nice and very palatable, but the intent is not that altruistic, and that's what matters. And here I want to raise a point, as I was just saying, that there's a lot of politics. We have been focusing on the technical issues, the legal framework, the structure, the capacity, and all that. This is what we are focusing on to it. But there are larger political issues, and I think Pakistan has upgraded itself on the political arena, and our part that we are playing in Afghanistan and the support that we are providing in resolution of the Afghan crisis and the peace process, I think Pakistan has gained in stature, and now I see less threats coming out of FATF, and the progress that we have made so far is sufficient to convince all those present there. And in this I would also like to link the visit of Prime Minister to China. I'm sure the Kashmir will be an issue, the CPEC will be discussed, and FATF will also be on the agenda, because China is an important player of that group also.
And I'm sure they will discuss this, but as far as a fair, unbiased and objective sort of decision is concerned, we have in fact approached the head of the FATF also. But let's see how it moves on. Now, ma'am, talking about the MOUs which we signed with the various countries, or sort of agreements, like you have a free trade agreement with various countries, then you have PTA also, and so on and so forth. Don't you think, ma'am, this money issue and the transactions issue and related to anything, money laundering for that matter, should be a part of those quotas actually? That if, for example, Mr. X is dealing with Mr. Y in Pakistan, you know, it should be clear that if X is caught, I mean, Y should be caught too. There should be some sort of an understanding, like swapping of the prisoners or swapping of other, like terrorists for that matter. There are certain understandings among various countries. Do you think this should be a part? Like, because this is when you use the word terror financing, I think financier is a bigger threat rather than the person who's actually committing the act.
Yes, I think we have bilateral agreements in which information exchange can take place, and I think it has taken place with some countries, like the UK, for example, has provided us some information, actionable information, which can be exchanged with one another, yes. But the point I would like to make here is that I think Pakistan being in the IMF program in itself also gives you a kind of a stability and a signal that we are a country with which business can be done. So that again is a positive for us, at least on an international arena. Similarly, our good terms with countries bilaterally also give a positive signal. So the aftermath or the outcome of the FATF, even if it's still in the grey list, we can somehow cushion that. But at the moment, because, as my colleague was saying, that there are many areas in which we have not been able to perform that well. Remember, these are many of the areas which are related with your non-profit organizations. It is difficult to, handle them. They have to be handled with care, because unlike what we are being forced to do, not all of them are genuinely only going for terror financing. They are also delivering social services. So that is why, for example, when we talk about madrasa reforms, when we talk about bringing these institutions back into the mainstream, that will help us in both these directions. So I think overall, the economic implications of FATF can also be handled in other ways in the short run. But in the long run, definitely we will have to deal with many of these issues which are being pointed out. Maybe the intention of them are not as it is written down, but whatever is being pointed out as you are reading, it does have some element of truth.
Obviously, obviously. Now, last quick comment, sir. For example, I mean, there are probabilities. Being in the blacklist, I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But if they say that, okay, you need to improve on these many fronts, but meanwhile we will keeping you in the grey list. So how long will we stay in the grey list, and what do we need to do? And is there any specific time for it, or what?
I think much will depend on how these big powers, US, China and others, big players in this group treat Pakistan. If they think that if they are sympathetic to Pakistan, they will give us more time, and probably Pakistan is serious in improving on these fronts and doing a lot of efforts. And Pakistan has already shown, and they have admitted that on 36 areas or points, Pakistan has made some improvements, and there are 4 areas which have been pointed out. Pakistan's intentions must be seen objectively. And if you are looking at us from the Indian prism only, or if you want to punish us and embarrass us, then that's a different ball game. But if you look at it from an angle that Pakistan has started moving on this track and moving fast, then I think we must be rewarded. And we must not be punished by pushing us into the blacklist.
All right. Anyway, Javed sir, thank you very much. Commodore sir, was a pleasure. Thank you very much, ma'am. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, take good care. Khuda Hafiz.